What's good? It's Woog. We've got Cruz, Pitbull, 26 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw, defending his WBA super lightweight title. Isn't that crazy? He won this thing from Romero, and now he's defending it against a guy who's making his 140-pound debut. But anyway, Cruz is defending his WBA 140-pound title against Jose Valenzuela, Rayo, 13 wins and 2 losses. As I mentioned, Cruz is the 140-pound title holder because in his 140-pound debut, he fought for the title against Romero, who won that belt in a vacant title fight against Ishmael Barroso in a very controversial stoppage. So the lineage of this particular WBA title, it's a little bit of a joke. And not to say that Cruz is a joke. Far from it. I'm just saying in terms of there being a meritocracy to determine who the WBA champion in a division is, it's a little bit bogus. And you see this in a lot of different divisions with a lot of different sanctioning bodies where it becomes like an insular deal where with one promoter, their stable of fighters get to kind of pass the belt around among that promotion, which is why in a division that also has Regis Prograis, Jose Ramirez, Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall, Richardson Hitchens, Gary Antoine Russell, Alberto Puello, who used to be the belt holder in this division. In this division, you've got Jose Valenzuela making his 140-pound debut and competing for a title. But in terms of the matchup, this is pretty interesting because you've got 2 excellent punchers. You got 2 guys who like to knock their opponents out. And in these instances, I feel like something's got to give. You've got Pitbull, who's a pressure heavy, keeps a high guard. He always looks to walk his opponent down. I mean, the guy went the distance with Tank Davis, and there was a lot of question going into the judge's decision who won that fight. It was close. I thought Davis won by a round or 2, but Davis did hurt his left hand, or he was visibly compromised where he wasn't using that hand for several rounds in the second half of that fight. But it was Cruz hunting Davis in that one. Jose Valenzuela, same thing. He's had 2 fights with Chris Colbert. He was the hunter in both of those fights. And in one of his fights, it became a be careful what you ask for because he fought Edwin De Los Santos. Yeah, the same Edwin De Los Santos who fought that super boring fight with Shakur Stevenson. And, when you look at Valenzuela versus De Los Santos, you might see why Shakur Stevenson wasn't super eager to engage heavily with De Los Santos. But when Valenzuela fought De Los Santos was like a 1-day replacement. He was a last-minute replacement. So they didn't have a lot of time to study each other. And it was evident because Valenzuela fought De Los Santos De Los Santos was just going to be the next guy to succumb to his power and his explosiveness. Well, De Los Santos is an excellent counterpuncher and he's super fast-handed and he's got some power. So when Valenzuela was engaging De Los Santos, he was quickly surprised by the hand speed. It didn't take a long time for De Los Santos to get going. He was hitting him with right hooks because De Los Santos, like Jose Valenzuela, is a southpaw. So he was hitting him with nice, crisp, lead right hooks, left hands, hard power jabs with the right. And Valenzuela was a big favorite here. Well, it was Valenzuela who ended up succumbing to Edwin De Los Santos' speed and power. And De Los Santos stopped Valenzuela in the 3rd round, which again, I believe is why you had such a weird fight between Stevenson and De Los Santos, because it was almost like, you make a move. No, you make a move. No, you make a move. And it was kind of like one of those standoffs, very uneventful. But although, yes, Valenzuela did get blitzed. Yes, he did run into one of the punches that wobbled Valenzuela was a jab. He just walked into a stiff jab and he got rocked for the 2nd or 3rd time in that fight. But Valenzuela really does have special power. Even in that fight against De Los Santos, a lot of people forget he dropped De Los Santos, I think, in the 2nd round of that one. But yeah, that was a pretty spectacular upset win for Edwin De Los Santos. And then of course you've got the 2 fights against Chris Colbert. The first one was the controversial unanimous decision loss for Valenzuela. A lot of people thought that he won that one. But with fights like that, you've got to do the boxing math. I could see how Chris Colbert could have earned the decision. I mean, I look at that fight a little bit like I look at Rashidi Ellis versus Roman Villa, where Rashidi Ellis won a lot of the rounds, but Roman Villa had by far the biggest, most explosive, most devastating moments. Even if you walk away from a fight thinking, yeah, I would have much rather have been the guy who didn't appear to be concussed, right? You would rather be Jose Valenzuela than you would have wanted to be Chris Colbert. But Chris Colbert won the decision because it was judged round by round, and the judges found more rounds to give Chris Colbert even after he got dropped badly in that fight. I think he might have gotten dropped multiple times. I know he got hurt a couple times really badly. Well, it ended up being a disputed decision win for Chris Colbert. Well, they ran it back. And when they ran it back, it was an absolutely brutal destruction of Chris Colbert at the hands of Jose Valenzuela. Now, Chris Colbert was gutsy. He did try to fight through the difficult times. He started putting up a high guard, even though it did seem like Chris Colbert was insistent on being hard-headed and not listening to his corner, basically kind of blowing them off like, no, I got this. That was kind of his attitude, even after he had been hurt badly. I mean, in the beginning of the fight, he got hurt. Well, by the end of this one, he got blasted by a straight left hand, and he went totally unconscious, landed on the bottom rope face down. So the bottom rope caught him. So he's got about this much of his body out of the ring. And again, he was just laying there, arms down by his side. It was pretty jarring. I think it was on a David Morrell undercard. But yeah, Chris Colbert got absolutely destroyed in that rematch against Jose Valenzuela. So the power is absolutely real. It's just hard to kind of gauge how Valenzuela will hold up against the type of pressure that we know Pitbull is going to be applying. Like, you can't look at Valenzuela versus Chris Colbert and then glean from that what a fight against Cruz would look like. Same thing with a fight against Edwin De Los Santos. Totally different style. Edwin De Los Santos is a fast-handed, again, counterpuncher, southpaw. Isaac Cruz, you know where he's coming. He's coming forward, right? And he's going to be right there with the high guard, throwing like looping right hands, going to the body, mixing it up with both hands. And again, keeping that high guard, staying super low. Like, as it stands, Isaac Cruz is like 5'4". Jose Valenzuela is listed at 5'10". I'm not sure if he's that tall. I would have guessed maybe 5'8 and a half, 5'9", but he's listed at 5'10". I've seen a picture of their face off, and it looks like it might be like a 4-inch height advantage for Valenzuela, but on paper, they say that it's a 6-inch height difference. So Isaac Cruz is going to be coming in pretty low, and he's going to be throwing just hard shots, one at a time, sometimes one following the other. And you know, the same way I feel like Valenzuela dropping De Los Santos doesn't get enough credit, when you rewatch Isaac Cruz in his last fight, the title win against Rolly Romero actually did better in that fight than I think he's given credit for. I mean, his reputation as a troll is so overwhelming, and it just kind of overshadows everything else that it's almost like the public wants to see him just eat his words and just wants him to look bad, wants him to get beaten up. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of the public wants that of Rolly Romero. But if you look at that fight, yes, Rolly Romero was on his bike, which should tell you something, because Rolly Romero is a puncher, and he hit Isaac Cruz with a lot of clean shots. Caught him coming in, caught him with uppercuts, caught him with straight right hands. He caught him with a lot of like really nice shots. It just didn't seem to deter Isaac Cruz in the slightest. So then you had Rolly Romero like on his bike, moving laterally a lot, holding a lot. Like, he was halfway in survival mode. Yes, he was still throwing punches. Yes, he was still trying to sit on his punches, trying to land hard, but he was moving. I don't know if Valenzuela is going to be moving laterally in the way that Rolly Romero was. I mean, it was the movement that allowed Rolly Romero to make it to the 8th round. That's when he got TKO'd, was in the 8th. And you'd have to think that in Cruz versus Valenzuela, that if somebody's going to be backing the other guy up, and one guy's going to be coming forward and the other guy's going to be finding a way to use the ring to their advantage, that the person who's going to be moving away, moving around should be Jose Valenzuela. Like otherwise, this is going to be a quick fight. If they're both coming forward and both looking to just annihilate each other without respecting or fearing the other guy's power, this will be a quick night, at least as far as I see it. I don't see it going the distance if it's gonna be combustible and both guys are gonna be coming forward, throwing their best stuff. Now, after that close loss to Tank Davis for Isaac Cruz, he's had 4 fights since. One of them was against a totally over the hill Yorkis Gamboa. He smoked him 5 rounds. He knocked out Eduardo Ramirez. Zordito, who we recently saw lose a decision to Mark Magsayo. Isaac Cruz blew him out in 2 rounds. Granted, I think he was coming up like 1 or even 2 divisions by the time he fought Isaac Cruz. So I thought that Zordito was going to be way too small to handle Isaac Cruz. Otherwise, I mean, in the lower divisions, Zordito Eduardo Ramirez, he was pretty good, but yeah, he could not deal with Isaac Cruz's aggression, power, so forth. And then Isaac Cruz fought Giovanni Cabrera, the same guy who William Zepeda just beat up and smoked. Yes, it was a very interesting first round, and yes, Giovanni Cabrera was just catching Zepeda cleanly with super nice punches, very accurately placed, but Giovanni Cabrera got overwhelmed and blown out by William Zepeda within like 3 to 4 rounds. Like, it was a quick fight, and it just made me like wonder, like, damn, after seeing the difficulty that Isaac Cruz had against Giovanni Cabrera, like he couldn't really cut the ring off as well. Giovanni Cabrera made him look super one-dimensional. Yes, Isaac Cruz won the majority of the rounds, even though it was a split decision win for Pitbull. It wasn't a unanimous decision win. Giovanni Cabrera had some success. Isaac Cruz looked like he was following him, chasing him, looked like he was having to reach too much and wasn't landing his best stuff. I mean, when he would go to the body, that looked like it was having an effect on Cabrera, but not so much the headshots. Zepeda, totally different story, but their statures, their builds are very different. Zepeda from Pitbull Cruz. But I don't expect Valenzuela to be moving in the way that Giovanni Cabrera was. Not that Cabrera was like running, he wasn't, but he had a lot of subtle movement and he rolls with punches really well. Jose Valenzuela, I feel, is pretty much there to get hit. Like, when he wasn't in the process of hurting or dropping Chris Colbert, he was getting outboxed and hit relatively cleanly. No, Isaac Cruz isn't the type of boxer that Chris Colbert is, even though we have to totally reevaluate Chris Colbert's abilities and skills, especially anywhere above 130. I mean, he got beaten up by Hector Garcia at 130, but since going to 135, I really wonder what Chris Colbert's future looks like at lightweight or anywhere above. But I don't expect Jose Valenzuela to be moving in the way that Giovanni Cabrera was. So I don't think he's going to give Isaac Cruz that type of like elusive difficulty. It just doesn't appear to be Rayo Valenzuela's game. So I think if anything, Valenzuela's game is going to more closely resemble Rolly Romero. But the question is, like I said, Rolly Romero started to get on his bike and started to move like his life depended on it, moving laterally this way, then that way, then stopping and popping, then holding, then getting back on the bike. He was doing a lot of that. Is Jose Valenzuela going to be reduced to doing that? I feel like he's got to do something to maintain range and to keep Isaac Cruz out there and not over here. But it's a little bit of an illusion because, again, even though Isaac Cruz is really short, he's very good at taking that 1 or 2 steps and then just throwing bombs that somehow reach their target. Again, not as much against Giovanni Cabrera. And Valenzuela is about, again, at least on paper, is supposedly the same height, around the same height as Giovanni Cabrera. So I don't think Valenzuela is going to be moving and super elusive. So again, something's got to give. How do I think this is going to play out? Well, one other stat that I thought was interesting is that, or one fact is that Pitbull fought Francisco Vargas. Rayo fought Francisco Vargas. So they both fought Francisco Vargas, El Bandido, the bandit, who fought like a classic with Orlando Salido. But Isaac Cruz went the distance. He won a 10-round unanimous decision against Francisco Vargas, whereas Jose Valenzuela, less than a year later, knocked Francisco Vargas out in the first round. But you would have to think that it was an accumulation, and maybe like the fight against Pitbull and the rough fights before that for Francisco Vargas, who's an action fighter, maybe those just were, you know, got to him to a point where by the time he fought Jose Valenzuela, he didn't have any like chin left or durability left. That's a strong possibility. But yeah, I was just going to throw that out there. But what I expect to see between Pitbull and Rayo Valenzuela is they're both going to be coming together. here. I think that Valenzuela is going to try to box a bit more. I don't know if Pitbull is going to be respecting his power. I kind of feel like he's going to fight Rayo like he fights everybody else, like he fought Tank Davis. He didn't look like he was super bashful against Tank, like he was really scared of Tank's power. He didn't. And again, he made it the distance. So, I mean, maybe Rayo sits Pitbull Cruz down on his behind because Pitbull doesn't respect Rayo's power. But I think that it's more likely that once Rayo gets a taste of Pitbull's power, he's going to start looking that same look in his face that he had against Edwin De Los Santos once he got rocked badly against De Los Santos. I feel like we might see that. And if it comes down to bombs flying and who could take whose power more, again, Isaac Cruz seems to have a really good chin. He fought Rolly Romero, wasn't deterred. Fought Tank Davis, wasn't deterred. Jose Valenzuela, I'm really not so sure. And maybe I'm looking at, I mean, obviously, because Valenzuela got stopped by De Los Santos. But even if you look at his neck compared with Pitbull Cruz's neck, Pitbull Cruz just looks like he's built to take and absorb shots a little bit better and more robustly than Jose Valenzuela. I used to think the same thing about Maurice Hooker when I would be analyzing his upcoming matchups, like against Virgil Ortiz and against Jose Ramirez. I wasn't sure that Maurice Hooker's body and structure was built to code, to use a real estate term. I'm not sure. I know he could dish out devastating offense. Valenzuela can. I don't know if in terms of taking shots, if he's fully built to code to where he can handle a Pitbull Cruz in the way that maybe Pitbull Cruz will be prepared to handle Jose Valenzuela's offense. I've got to go with Pitbull Cruz on this one. And, Valenzuela, like how much, if he needs to get into survival mode, what is his survival game like? Because again, he's super offense heavy. He's not one of these guys who you've got to find, you know what I mean? Like, so unless he totally switches that up and unless he hurts Pitbull enough to gain and keep Pitbull's respect, it's going to be another case of Pitbull walking his opponent down. And if it turns into that, I think he stops Rayo Valenzuela. So that's where I'm going to go. Again, it would be pretty scintillating and exciting to see Valenzuela maybe get Pitbull Cruz's attention where he rocks him or even drops him. That would be like a whoa. But if I had to pick the most likely outcome here, and by the way, odds wise, Isaac Cruz is a minus 360 and Jose Valenzuela is a plus 333. So yeah, a lot of this is reputation too, because again, Pitbull Cruz, he had that big win against Rolly Romero. A lot of people saw that fight. Pitbull Cruz is the one who fought the close fight with Tank Davis. A lot of people saw that. So reputation wise, they know about him a little bit more than people know about Jose Valenzuela. And again, those who really know about Valenzuela, they've seen him get knocked out against Edwin De Los Santos, and they saw him lose a decision against Chris Colbert. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Pitbull Cruz via, I'll say, damn, I wouldn't be surprised if this one actually doesn't make it into the late rounds. Again, I just don't know what type of durability Valenzuela has once an opponent is not afraid of him, is walking him down, and is putting on heavy artillery and just dishing out hard shots. I don't know if Valenzuela can handle that in the way that even a Chris Colbert, who is vulnerable, who doesn't have nearly the offense of Valenzuela, but who can maybe box his way out of some difficult situations in a way that I'm just not sure Valenzuela is prepared to do. So I'm actually going to go with Isaac Cruz via middle round stoppage. I'm saying somewhere between maybe 5 and 7 rounds, 5 and 7. I'm going to go there. Isaac Cruz to stop Jose Valenzuela. But again, I would just be curious to see how Isaac Cruz reacts to Valenzuela if Valenzuela lets his hands go. I'm assuming he could take the punch, but we've got to see it. But if he can take the punch and isn't spooked by the power, Valenzuela is in trouble. But yeah, I'm going Cruz via mid-round stoppage here. Let me know your thoughts on Cruz versus Valenzuela. I mean, again, it's hard to even discuss this fight in terms of the broader landscape at 140. I mean, maybe they end up doing Isaac Cruz versus Alberto Puello, who just got the upset win. Even though I didn't look at it as much of an upset, I looked at that as being a nearly 50-50 fight between him and Gary Antoine Russell. But yeah, Puello earned the decision. I wouldn't be mad if Cruz Cruz gets past Valenzuela, I wouldn't be mad at Isaac Cruz versus Alberto Puello. And I mean, if they are insistent about keeping it in-house, I would like that fight. I would certainly rather that than to see Isaac Cruz be Tank Davis's next opponent. If it's not going to be Lomachenko, which I'm hoping that Lomachenko walking away from the negotiating table was just a ploy to start getting more leverage in negotiations. I hope that at the end of the day, Loma does fight Tank. That's what I'm hoping. But if Loma doesn't fight Tank, then I really want Tank versus Shakur Stevenson. I don't really want to, not that I don't want to see the fight. I would just rather Tank versus Shakur than a rematch between Tank and Isaac Cruz. But you know how these things go. The promoter and the sanctioning body can have them run it back to where Gervonta Davis could hold on to his lightweight title and challenge Isaac Cruz for an actual 140-pound title. Because remember, for a while, Tank Davis was the regular WBA 140-pound champ. At the same time, Josh Taylor had the real WBA 140-pound title. But this, if they do Tank versus Cruz 2, would be a way of the promoter kind of getting crafty and getting Tank Davis a shot at becoming a legit champion at 140 while he's also a lightweight champion. But yeah, let me know what you think about Cruz versus Valenzuela in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.